Most common mistake is charging into your business and not taking care of some of the basics of starting a business. You know, we've seen pictures of people doing it on the back of a napkin. I think that's pretty rare. You have to have a business plan that you can share with people. There's always going to be naysayers out there, and you can't let them, talk you out of your idea. You have to explain your idea to other people in a very coherent manner. You're going to have times when you're totally down in the dumps and times when you're totally elated, and all of that may happen before lunch. I think one of the most important things is to find a partner to help share this experience with you.
He's a former Air Force and commercial airline pilot and insurance executive. He's a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, a business mentor, and he advises MBA students on entrepreneurialism at the University of Michigan's Ross Business School. He's also on the advisory board of 6 startups. He's Stewart Nelson, and if you're thinking of starting something up, you really need to hear the key fundamentals he'll advise you on being sure you execute. If I want to start something up, whether it's something I already know I want to do or I want to find what I want to do, but in order to go down that path, what is the key mindset that I have to have?
Well, that's a really great question. It's a question that every entrepreneur or anybody that's thinking of becoming an entrepreneur should answer, because there's a lot of questions about yourself as to whether you have the personality to do this, whether your significant other has the strength to follow you and allow you to proceed with this business, because there can be a lot of friction on that side of it, because starting a business is not simple. If it was easy, we'd all be out doing it every day. It's very difficult and it's time consuming, and you can plan on 10-hour days or working until the job gets done. So you have to have the mindset that you're willing to spend the time in order to finish what you've started. I think that it's also really important that you maintain your health. If we're talking about some of the seniors, I don't know how to define what a senior is right now. I used to think that my father was old, but I'm not so certain any longer. We have to take care of ourselves. We're not in the same, we don't have the same bodies, we don't have the same energy levels, and so keeping your health is also really important. So you have to protect that first of all, because if you get sick, then it's all for naught.
And by the way, I would endorse that, because I know as I've started this endeavor, and I get very excited about it, I've got a lot of energy to do it, and I think I'm in actually pretty good health, but I've noticed that with all that energy, both physical and emotional, it's like, I need to kick it up a notch, because you can really get going, and if you don't have the health to follow through for any age, that's a challenge.
One of the most important things I truly believe is that you have to explain your idea to other people in a very coherent manner. We call it preparing an elevator pitch. And as you go out and you tell your idea, or you give your elevator pitch to as many people that will listen to you, and you listen to their feedback, and you actually take advantage and incorporate their feedback. And if people tell you that something's not going to work, I think you really need to be of the mindset to listen to people, because it may not work. Don't try and kid yourself. You can kid other people, but you really can't kid yourself. And I think that you really need to be honest about whether this business even makes sense right from the beginning.
Well, that's an interesting point, because just this morning I was listening to Jay Samit, who's known as the Disruptor, and a very, very successful man. And he says that when somebody comes to him with an idea, he does them a service by trying to kill the idea. In other words, he focuses on what's wrong with the idea or the way that they're pitching. He says not to literally kill the idea, but rather to bring up those points that people need to right now be aware of, so that they can pivot, adjust, address it and overcome? How do you know when I just need to move on, or I need to tweak, fix, pivot, adjust?
It's a really good point, and I think that it depends. There's always people that are going to be trying to pee on your ideas. Forgive my language.
Don't worry about it.
But there's always going to be naysayers out there, and you can't let them, talk you out of your idea. That's one of the main points that even when I'm talking with younger entrepreneurs, is that don't listen to the naysayers. But you have to be realistic about it. So what I suggest is that you find a mentor for yourself, even though that mentor may be younger than you are, that you can listen to, and somebody that you trust. And you need one or two, or maybe two or three of these types of people, and rely on those mentors, and they'll tell you when you're going astray. Hopefully they will, because they're doing a disservice to you if they just follow the party line and tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, as I often say, I don't want to hear it, but I need to hear it.
Yeah, right, correct.
You've been involved in so many startups, some of them your own, others now, multitudes. University of Michigan Ross Business School, you're teaching and mentoring and supporting others. I hate to start on the negative, but what are some of the significant failures that you've seen people regularly do, and that anyone should be avoid and be aware of as they move forward in this? What are some of those key aspects?
I think one of the most important things is to find a partner to help share this experience with you. You're going to have times when you're totally down in the dumps and times when you're totally elated, and all of that may happen before lunch. You're on a roller coaster. And having somebody to share those periods with you is really important. That decision of who you're going to partner with is really critical. I've seen more failures of businesses because of personality conflicts, of people that don't get along. They think that they do. There's a honeymoon period, and you can get along with anybody for 3 months or 4 months, and then all of a sudden little idiosyncrasies start coming into play. And so you have to pick that partner really well, because these types of conflicts can really tear the business apart.
Towards that end, it seems to me to be a bit of a dilemma that, yes, you want that partner, just like in life, you have a life partner to support you through the hard times, which is challenging. But also, as a business mentor of mine once said to me, partnerships are harder than marriage, because, as you alluded to, everyone has a different approach, a different work ethic, a different set of goals. How do you not only work through it, how do you prevent that from becoming an issue?
Well, I think that communication is the key. Is you have to, if you see something or you experience something that you don't like that your partner's doing, I think you need to be very honest with them. Hinting and hoping isn't a strategy. You need to be sort of blunt about it at times, I think, and be candid with each other. And that's the only way to do it, because the consequences are disastrous. I'm going through one of those right now, or a team that I've been working with for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, just split up because they can't get along. And the stress is actually worse than a divorce, I believe.
One entrepreneur who went into a partnership, and this seems to make a lot of sense to me, I want your take on it, said that we sat down and together hammered out an agreement to sign and notarize. And he said it wasn't so much like a legal document to hold somebody to something. It was to actually put it down on paper so that we formally and fully understood what our agreements were, and if anything, not raise any kind of doubt or wondering what's going on here or something like that. Just to really make it clear they formalized it.
That's absolutely mandatory. You can't get along without it. You have to have the same expectations. If my expectation is that I want to sell this business in 3 years, and your expectation is you want to run this thing for the rest of your life, we've got a problem. And how are we going to resolve that? And there's not just issues with that. When the profits start coming in, Are we going to reinvest the profits back into the business to grow this thing? How big do we want to grow it? Do we want to take some of that cash flow and put it back into our pockets instead of investing it in the business? All of those things need to be worked out beforehand. And it can go into what's called an operating agreement, and your attorney can help you do that. But what it does is it level sets your expectations so that they're not going to be disappointing one or the other, 3 years into this. And so I think it's absolutely mandatory that you have an agreement. Now, whether it's formalized and notarized, that's up to you. I would prefer that it was, and in writing, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just a handshake that you look the other person in the eye and say, these are my expectations, I hope they match yours.
What are some of the other shortfalls or things that when people started out a business weren't prepared for, weren't aware or ready for, that you've seen commonly, and especially that can be fixed with forethought?
Most common mistake, I believe, is charging into your business with your partner and just trying to get the product launch or the service launch and not taking care of some of the basics of starting a business. Every business needs an attorney. You need to have an attorney that's going to prepare certain documents for you, and going ahead without an attorney can be disastrous.
And you find that's common?
Oh, it's very common because people don't want to spend the money. But they end up spending it later, I can tell you, and it's more expensive if you do it later. Another professional service that you need is a very strong accountant, somebody that's used to dealing with startups, and that can guide you into setting up your books and your records, because accounting is really critical to a business. If nothing else, to tell you when you're going astray and you need to make some changes. If you're running a very large deficit, that can't go on forever. So you need to understand when you're making money and when you're not making money. It may not be your goal to make money, but at least you need to have somebody there to advise you. So at a minimum, having a good accountant and a good lawyer, I think those are critical. As we talked about earlier, having a couple of mentors or advisors that you can count on, and talking to them about starting it up. And then the other thing is just, the other big mistake is just the expectation of how long this is going to take. It's always twice as long, and it's always twice as expensive. So whenever if you think that you're going to be cash flow positive in 9 months, it will be 18 months, I guarantee you. At least.
What I've heard from so many successful entrepreneurs and advisors such as yourself is not only having somebody who can do those kinds of tasks because that's their expertise. You need to be focused on things other than that, and you also need somebody to come to you with the truth. But also filling the gaps and knowing what you're good at doing and what you're not good at doing. And what you're not good at doing, find people who are. Do you find that some people fail because they don't fill those gaps with their own gaps of knowledge and skill with people who are better at it?
Oh, certainly. If you hire or partner with people that are exactly like yourself, I think you're going to fail very quickly, because there's no one there to question what you're doing. You can be very efficiently plowing the wrong field. And so that's where the diversity and the complementary part of finding a partner or finding employees, that it's just critical. I think defining roles is really important too. What role are you going to play in this business, and what role will I be playing? How much time do you plan on putting into this business, and how much time do I plan on putting into it? Nothing can bring a business apart as if one person is working 5 hours a week and the other one's working 60 hours a week. That's just not fair, and it won't survive. So I think that's another key point.
Ergo the agreement.
Yeah, back to the agreement again. Sure. I do think that it is important to find people that will complement you rather than people that think the same way you do.
Okay, so let's say, so I've got this idea, and I've got some mentors, and I've even got a partner. Now, what are some of the other really key first steps that I should take and in validating my idea, competition, practically getting it started and getting it started smartly?
Yes, I think that the worst thing you can do, as I mentioned, was to just charge off and start the business. There's so many resources that are out there that are available to you. I frequently rely on Ann Arbor Spark here. It's an economic development corporation, local here. There's other ones around in other cities and things, and the amount of resources that these people have are just incredible. They put on programs where you can talk to other entrepreneurs and you can learn from the mistakes that they've made. They put on programs that can teach you about starting a business. I used to do an insurance part of starting your own business at Ann Arbor Spark. I would talk about what insurance that a business needed. They would bring in lawyers and accountants, and so you can meet these people. The other thing is there's a lot of networking opportunities out there, meetups they call them, where you can go and you can share ideas and cross-pollinate ideas back and forth and see things from a little different perspective. But there's so many resources that are available for you out there. I think finding a resource of a solid banker is also important. Starting a bank account at one of the banks that might be able to help you as you go down the road, not to loan money, but to just to help you handle cash flow at the start of the business. And then further along, there could be an opportunity where there could be a loan from it. But I think your local banker is also an opportunity. Go to lunch with them and talk to them. The Chamber of Commerce is another really good resource that people forget about. And they have so many people that are in the same businesses. And I guarantee you that every business owner out there, if you ask them, will spend some time with you and help you out. I do pro bono work with people all of the time. I worked for 2 years with people without any expected return. I feel very strongly about minorities participating in this. I currently mentor 3 minorities that are individuals that are starting businesses, and I don't ask for any compensation. My compensation is I just feel like I want to give back. And I think you'll find that even if they won't spend 2 hours with you in a coffee shop, like you and I did the first time, they'll spend some time on the telephone with you. And so reach out to other people. Don't try and do it on your own. There's so many people out there, and you can't afford to make every mistake that you possibly can. You have to learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, and in fact, I've heard so many people express that, the saying that anything you want to do, someone's already done.
Guaranteed.
And so why not tap in and learn from their mistakes or learn what they did for it? And secondly, the networking thing is huge too, and that's something that ProBoomers is going to focus on as well, is the art of networking and how to really make it effective, because you don't just show up at a networking event or something and start handing out cards, right?
Yes, no, I mean, everybody has their own style, and some people can work a crowd like a pickpocket. Other people just sit there and they stare down at their feet. A lot of our, not to discriminate about engineers, but sometimes, they're looking at their shoes while they're speaking to you instead of looking you in the eye, shaking hands, and getting out there. I think that networking, I've discovered so many things by networking that I never knew were possible, and some things that have saved some companies that I've been in.
So one of the points you brought up earlier, the banker, leads us to the thought of funding. No bucks, no Buck Rogers, if you don't have funding. And these days there's such a multitude of ways, ranging from the bank to crowdfunding to just innumerable ways to start something up. How do you even figure that out? How do you figure out what path and what's realistic in terms of going out and getting the funding that you need for your endeavor?
The type of funding that you go out and look for is going to depend on the type of business that you start. If you're starting a high technology business, a medical device company, a software company, software as a service company, there's more than enough economic development companies around that will help you out. Ann Arbor Spark can put together microloans up to $40,000 for you, and with very, very generous payback terms. They also have grants. You can get up to $40,000 in a grant. That grant can't be spent to do things other than hiring an attorney or hiring an accountant, but that's perfect because then you don't have to spend your money on for those folks. If you're starting a lifestyle business and you want to open a flower shop, or wildflowers are my hobby, it's going to be more difficult, and you're going to have to do it on your own. Most likely it's going to be personal funds that are going to take care of this on a lifestyle business. And therefore, you have to have a certain amount of funding yourself set aside. In a business, we look at cash flow, and we call the amount of cash flow that you have available to you as your runway. So your business has a runway, but you also personally have a runway. If you can't live without a salary for 3 months or 6 months or 18 months, you're going to have problems unless you can go out and find external funding. And if it's not the type of business that's people are willing to put that type funding into, there's going to be a problem. So financing is always an issue, but if you have a good idea, I can't say that I've never seen great ideas go unfunded, but most of the time, if you have a great story, you can find funding.
So let's say I do have that great idea, but I want to make sure that when I go to somebody for funding, whether it's a banker or a economic development group such as Spark, or a VC or an investor or my next door neighbor, what do I need to make sure I have to convince them? How do I cross my T's and dot my I's in terms of, I guess I'm thinking everything from competitive analysis to market analysis. Of course, everybody says, oh my God, I can't afford to do that. So what do you have to have?
Well, one is you have to have a business plan that you can share with people. We've seen pictures of people doing it on the back of a napkin. I think that's pretty rare. At least in Michigan it is. I mean, you may be able to get by with that if you're a third-time serial entrepreneur in Silicon Valley having lunch with a VC that will go ahead and fund you. Around here, you need to put your thoughts down in writing. And part of that is what we call a pro forma. It's a 5-year expectation of what you think the revenues and expenses of the business are going to be, so that you can see when this business might actually start generating cash flow for you out there. And if it's going to be a long time before it starts generating cash flow, how are you going to make up that shortfall? That has to be external funding that's kind of coming into the business. When you're first getting started, there's always what we call friends, families, and fools. That will invest in a business because they know Stu Nelson or they know Paul Long. My mother invested in my first business. Of course, it was the most scary money that I ever took into a business. She put $15,000 in, and I couldn't take my eye off it. Yet I've gone out and raised several $1 million and not even thought about it. But so you have to be really careful when you're dealing with. Oh, yes, you can. No, you can't ask anybody to put money in that they're not willing to lose. Yeah. And if you're going to take it up to the next level, then you need more detailed plans. If you're going to go out and have angels come in and invest, which is typically the next step, they're going to want to know more things about this business. They're going to want to know how much you're going to be spending on product development for the next 5 years. How much are you going to be spending on marketing for the next 5 years? How much are you going to be spending on headcount for the next 5 years? That's tricky. And the reason they want that is good because they want to know that if I put in $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, is that going to be enough to get you to the goal line? If this is a business like a life science business, it might be $27-30 million that's required. Well, I, as an angel investor, am not going to want to put in $50,000 knowing that we're going to have to raise $27 million. So you owe that to your investors. And so there's more detailed planning that needs to go into it. And I think that's the difference. When you bring other people's money in, you have to treat it like it's other people's money and treat it like it's your own and use it judiciously.
So if you do get somebody to invest, and especially a professional investor like a VC, an angel, a banker, they're going to have, your feet are going to be held to the fire. They're going to hold you accountable.
Yes, absolutely hold you accountable. And like I said, I've gone back to investors with my hat in my hand and apologizing profusely for missing a milestone. But really, if you're honest and you start communicating that early with the investor, you can sort of prepare them for that. And when you go to them, they're really expecting it. Nobody hits every milestone that they set for themselves or that the VCs have set for themselves.
And that's why transparency is important too.
Communication, yeah. You just have to talk with the investors.
Don't try to sugarcoat it.
Don't try to sugarcoat it or blame someone else. They don't want to hear that. And and if you reach a certain point in your business, if you miss too many of those milestones, those investors will replace you. So there's consequences other than just getting follow-on funding.
So another thing that you were mentioning that was really important in terms of things like competitive analysis, cost analysis, all of those kind of things. If no one has a background in that, I can just imagine them sitting here right now going, oh my God, no, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to do that. But you don't have to, or there are resources out there.
There are resources.
And it's not necessarily as big a deal as you think.
No, it's not. Ann Arbor Spark, for instance, on their grant money, will pay for you to bring in an accountant to do some of those things with you. I prefer to do those projections myself, but I do them for other people all of the time. I actually have a team of people that we do that.
Yeah, so you know how. And by the way, every time you say Ann Arbor Spark, it's like where you are in the world.
Yes.
There's an economic development.
Oh yes, right.
That's there that's there to help.
Yeah, there's Tech Town, there's Automation Alley,
but
Macomb. Yeah, I mean they're all over the state.
But if I'm in North Dakota, there's somebody there that can help me.
That's correct.
But also too, if I wanted to do it myself, you're really kind of a Google search away from finding tools and information to show you how to do it, correct? And it's not necessarily a daunting.
No, it's not rocket science. I mean, I think that everybody can learn it. Some people are more have more innate ability that they can go ahead and do it. I've worked with engineers before. Here I've worked with one of my favorite engineers in a company that I invested in here in town, and I taught him accounting in 2 months. He's a brilliant young rocket scientist from the University of Michigan.
Literally.
Oh yeah. And so it's very difficult to teach an accountant rocket science, but it's very easy to teach a rocket scientist accounting, and we frequently do. And now he could probably teach me a few things. So I think yes, there's resources out there, and they're on the internet. There's full of them. Producing what we call a cap table can be a daunting task. That's keeping track of the number of shareholders and how many shares they have through a series of investments. It's not a trivial task, but there's templates that are available out there that you can look for. There's templates
for business plans and
all of that.
Everything.
Yes, operating agreements. A lot of the Silicon Valley the lawyers that operate out of the valley, they put this right on their website that you can do it. Y Combinator, which is a business accelerator, and not to dwell on Ann Arbor Spark too much, but they have a program called Spark Boot Camp. And what that does, it's like a business accelerator, but a short version of it. Some of them last 3 months, some of them last, a week. But there's business accelerators, and I would highly encourage somebody to go to one of those, because then you're drawing in experts that are weighing in on what you're doing, and accelerators are terrific. But they're now domain-specific accelerators. So if you're in advanced materials, there's an advanced materials accelerator. Techstars is a transportation-related accelerator right out of Detroit. And actually, Techstars is a national organization, so they have them in a lot of the major metropolitan areas that that if you get into an accelerator, they'll take a small piece of your company. But the connections and the information and the guidance that they provide you is invaluable.
So the bottom line is that wherever you live in the country and pretty much the world,
Yes.
there's an organization. There's Google, and there's an organization that has virtually any of the
Yeah.
information, any of the connections that you need. It's being aware that you need it,
Yes.
and going after it.
Yes, and not trying to do it yourself. I, up until February, was the president of a group called the New Enterprise Forum here in Ann Arbor. Our mission was to, and we were free, we didn't charge anything for our services. We had about 45 professionals that donated their time. We would spend 4 or 5 sessions at an hour a session, getting an entrepreneur ready to go out and raise money. And so that was our main mission. So, you know, there's not a New Enterprise Forum everywhere, but there are other resources that are similar to it with people that can help you step through that hoop.
Now, I figure one way or another, if you're watching this video, you're not an experienced startup person. So you're coming from some other background, and you certainly may be coming from a business or corporation where you've spent decades, and there's a certain mindset, a certain way of doing business. How radical is that shift going to be for me, coming from a business or corporation all my life to doing my own thing? And if it is radical, what do I need?
That's a terrific question. It's more than radical, really, because if you're coming out of a large corporation and you're used to having a secretarial staff that's going to be doing your things, it's going to be pretty big shock to you when you find yourself answering the telephone for your business and taking messages for other people. I mean, somebody has to do that. So it's a pretty big jump for somebody that hasn't come from the small business side of things. Another thing that popped into my mind when you were asking that is that when you're coming out of any background, there's a lot, the things that can really come back to bite you, and it's almost trite to say it, but it's not what you know that's going to get you in trouble. It's what you think you know, but you don't know, and or what you don't even know that's going to get you into trouble.
I don't know what
I don't know what I don't know. Yes, exactly. And so I think that's why all these networking events and all of the resource and the mentor, they can help you through some of those rough spots.
And what about, and I'm sorry to use this word, what about the paradigm of the corporate and business, pre-existing business mindset that I've lived under and now doing a startup? So, you know, certainly if you're in a large corporation or even a decent business, there's a certain mindset. Is it an entirely different mindset that I need to prepare myself for in this new iteration of myself?
Absolutely, totally different mindset, because, you know, I've been dealing in the current business that I'm in with a major corporation, and the speed with which they operate and the speed with which we operate are in 2 different systems, different calibrations. You know, they do things in months, we do things in days. So the speed with which these things come at you is different. The other thing is that those big businesses, their whole purpose was to find defensible ways to protect their business model. What we're trying to do in the startup world is we're trying to invent new business models. Think about what Uber, with the way that they've delivered transportation services, has done to the taxi business. Think about how Airbnb has changed the way we deliver rooms when you're out traveling on the road, whether for business or for pleasure. Those people thought outside of the box, which is another trite saying, but it's also really important when you're picking the business model to come up with something that you're not going to do things differently, and that's where the big disruption comes. That's potential from startups.
Yeah, to quote Jay Samit for the second time in one interview. He's like, okay, who is the largest personal transportation business in the world but has no vehicles? Uber. What is the largest lodging company in the world that puts more people to bed when they're out of town in the world, but has no hotel rooms? Airbnb. What's the largest retailer in the world but has no merchandise? Alibaba.
Yeah, yes, or Amazon. Yeah, well, although Amazon does have it, then even going back, but through even recent history on the business model side of things, Fred Smith from FedEx had a totally different way of moving packages around the country and totally reinvented that industry, and is still working today. And Southwest Airlines, with their idea that we're just going to have one type of an airplane, and we're going to stick with that, and we're going to be a major force, regionally, and not go into this international business where we needed 5 different types of aircrafts. They reinvented the airline industry down there too, to a certain extent, at least for the local flights. And now Southwest is still the darling of business travelers. They still love it. But those are the types of innovations that really can gain. I'm not saying that you have to try and think up the next Uber before you go out and start a business. But if you can sort of think about how you're going to deliver this product or service and do it differently than someone else, but better, I think there's an advantage to that.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of focus on that, because you said something, and I have heard this a couple of times, but I don't think I really thought it through or registered it, when you said that an existing business, and especially a corporation, is in a defensive position as opposed to a startup. So it's not just a matter of disruption or innovation, but at least is it a different way to look at things and things to consider, that I'm not just trying to maintain and protect, but I'm trying to go after something that permeates through all aspects of the business, not just the concept.
Yes. I think that's absolutely true. There is and it's available on the internet out there. It's a concept or a process called the business model canvas. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not, but it was invented by a gentleman by the name of Osterwald, and it was a direct result of Uber and Airbnb's disruption in the way business models are delivered. And what it is, it's a holistic way of looking at a business with entirely different eyes and figuring out what's important in this business. Amazon did it. Amazon said, we don't need to have retail outlets there, that we can get things to you very quickly. And now, my goodness, they deliver toilet paper to people. So examining, from what partnerships that you're going to need to have, what core competence you're going to need to have, what channels that you're going to need to set up for this. And it goes through 9 different points with you and has you think about those in depth, and then come back up and you write your business plan from the business model canvas. And it's a great way of thinking about it. We used it at Ross for a couple of years to have
University of Michigan.
At the University of Michigan, yes, and I mentor over there in a finance class for financing high technology ventures, and it's a big part of it.
Well, we could talk for hours, and I have a feeling that we're going to have to circle back and do a lot more interviews with Stu, because this is just absolutely amazing information and just spot on. Let me end with last but not least, in considering the focus of our audience, although I think every piece of information you've given is good to anyone of any ilk, of any age. But when it comes to someone over 50-ish, all the way up, when it comes to starting a business, or starting up some endeavor of some sort, of service, What do you think are the key advantages of being of this age? Because we hear so much about the young entrepreneurs. You know, you got to be young to be an entrepreneur and everything else. What do you think are some of the key advantages to embrace and be aware of and to leverage when you're our age?
Well, I think that the big advantage that we have over the young is we have so much more experience in life and different things. And you understand what your passion is, and you understand what you dislike doing. You know, and so my suggestion is that you find something that it's not like going to work. Follow your passion. If you're, for instance, I'm very interested in wildflowers. So I've started a blog, and it's a hobby. I'm not doing it to make money. It tugs at me from doing things that I should be doing, other things, because I like to go out and categorize my flowers. But that's some type of a business that's a passion with me that I could turn into a business. There's ways to monetize whatever your passions are. What are your hobbies? You know, what do you like to do, you know, when you're not working? And I think that's one of the best tips that I could give anybody, is to follow your passion.
Now, what if you don't know? I think I would be remiss if I said, well, what if I don't really know what my passion is?
Well, that takes a lot of soul searching then. And that's another thing that having a personal mentor can help you with too. And or your partner in life. You know, I mean, mainly it's what, like I said, it's where does your mind go when you're working? You know, if your mind's going to your wildflowers, then probably that's a passion. So I think you can sort of be aware, you know, and Zen-like, and notice when your mind is drifting off. Where's it drifting? That's probably some passion that's pulling you or tugging you somewhere. So take advantage of that and exploit it.
Now, let's also say that, because my initial research shows that there are three key audiences for this kind of information and this endeavor. And one is the person who's not ready to retire, and it's my turn. I want to do something. I've got a vision. I've got a dream. I just want to do something. Person who can't afford, you know, not to quit, and the person looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do I do? And in the person looking for something, maybe they might not be able to associate something with a passion, but, you know, quite frankly, I just want a cool money-making idea. Mm-hmm. And I did hear somebody say, spend a couple of weeks looking for every problem that you confront personally, or you see other people. Start a list and then pull from that. What do you think about that? Which ties into something I've heard before, that where there's a problem, there's a need, there's an opportunity. What's your take on that?
I think it's a little simplistic. I mean, really, if you find a problem that's way outside of your experience or your core competence or your educational level, it's going to be very difficult to come up with some solution. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying that, you know, there's certain inventor types out there and they can go and look at a problem and actually do that. But I think the more likelihood of success is if someone finds things that they have some experience on, things that they've been trained in formally. I'm not saying that's critical. I mean, I've reinvented myself 3 times. I mean, I started out life as an airline captain. I went back to school, got my master's in business, went out and I started 2 businesses while I was flying with the airlines. After I retired from the airlines, I went into the insurance business and I taught myself the insurance business and became a cyber liability expert, selling cyber liability insurance to people all over the country. I've reinvented myself again just recently when I retired from insurance, and now I'm the CEO of a chemical company.
You're on the board of
and I'm on the board of numerous startups. I got a C in chemistry. But I teamed up with a world famous chemist. And so we're taking technology and we're figuring out how to commercialize it. So you can always team up with people, but I just think that you know, going out and looking for ideas and waiting for this aha moment, it's just not going to happen. You know,
comes
Thomas
from hard work
comes from hard work and looking and doing research and understanding yourself. But you know, Thomas Edison was one of a kind. You know, when a light bulb goes off and he's got to.
But yet, it still took him 1,000.
It took him 1,000 years, and he could get by on 5 hours sleep, and I can't get, or no sleep. And I have to have my 8 hours or 10 hours, and that doesn't get in the way. I just schedule things differently than Thomas Edison would.
There's a lot more great insight and information from Stu and other high-performance, highly successful business and thought leaders and entrepreneurs. Be sure to check it all out at ProBoomers.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.